The school was left in a state of stunned silence when he executed a precisely executed move, despite their mocking, underestimating, and belief that he would not respond. The first thing William Mercer observed about Redmond High School was the exceptional cleanliness of the premises. Not merely spotless, polished, managed. The world was flawlessly reflected in the glass windows. The hallways stretched out, and the floors gleamed under fluorescent lights, an unnaturally orderly environment for a location filled with adolescents. It was not like his previous school in Birmingham, Alabama, where the walls were adorned with student murals and the sound of beatboxing could be heard in a stairwell at any given moment. The atmosphere at Redmond High School was antiseptic. His mother had referred to the relocation as a new beginning. His father, who was consistently more forthright, had referred to it as an essential adjustment. William was uncertain about the name at this time. However, he could sense it the instant he entered those front doors. People were watching. Refraining from gazing, that would be excessively obvious. However, the fleeting glances, the scarcely whispered comments, and the manner in which certain students scrutinized him from head to toe before retreating all conveyed the same message. Who is this individual? William was not diminutive for a 16-year-old. He was 5 feet 10 inches and had a physique that was the result of years of rigorous training, not just physical activity. His muscles were lean and controlled, and he moved with the quiet confidence that his father had instilled in him. His steps were measured, his posture was upright, and he never slouched. Nevertheless, he must have appeared to them as an outsider, as he was. He arrived at the front office without incident and obtained his schedule from the overly polite receptionist. As he exited, a group of students near the lockers captivated his attention. A tall, broad-shouldered individual with perfectly styled blonde hair was leaning against the lockers, flanked by 2 others who were laughing at something he had just said. Their laughter was not loud, it was the type that was intended to be overheard, just enough to ensure that the target knew they were the joke. William was not yet the target, but he could sense it, a gradual calculation. The blonde individual, Ryan Callow, according to the class roster he had previously reviewed, directed him a glance that was neither hostile nor hospitable. It was the type of gaze that one would give when contemplating whether or not to escalate the situation. William had previously observed it. Ryan smirked, leaned toward one of his companions, and said something low enough that William couldn't hear. The 2 others chuckled, looking at him just a little too long. William exhaled slowly through his nose and walked past them, disregarding it. He had nothing to prove. His dad's voice echoed in his mind, the same advice he'd been given 100 times. Strength is not a matter of showcasing one's capabilities. It's about knowing when to walk away. Consequently, he departed. But the thing about men like Ryan? They don't like being ignored. And this wasn't the last time they'd cross paths. William had been at Redmond High for less than a week, but he already knew how things worked. The school had an unspoken order, a quiet hierarchy that didn't need to be spelled out. The athletes ran things. The wealthy kids acted like royalty. And everyone else just found a way to exist without drawing attention. William? He was somewhere in between. He wasn't loud, wasn't seeking for trouble. But he also wasn't timid. And that alone made him stand out. People like Ryan Callow thrived on simple targets, kids who shrank back, kids who laughed nervously when they were insulted, kids who didn't know how to respond. William wasn't one of those people. But Ryan was determined to make him one. It began small. In the hallways, a shoulder bump that wasn't inadvertent. A "watch where you're going," murmured just loud enough for William to hear. A notebook, inadvertently knocked off his desk in history class. Ryan would exhibit that grin subsequent to the event, as if he were conducting a test and anticipating a response. William did not provide him with anything. Next, the comments ensued. "Didn't know they let kids from the hood in here. Mercer, have you ever considered attempting out for the football team? I imply, you individuals are proficient in that, correct? Man, you are silent. Are there no intelligent responses? I was under the impression that you were intended to be amusing. The most detrimental aspect?" Ryan never explicitly stated it in the presence of a teacher. It was consistently sufficiently low that the incorrect individual could interpret it as a jest. Ryan could sigh and appear innocent if someone called him out, as the subtlety was just right. The others, on the other hand, chuckled. Not all of them, but a sufficient number. Enough to cause William's hands to contract into fists beneath his desk. He contemplated informing his father, however, he was already aware of the outcome. Approach it with a sense of order. Refrain from descending to their level. And his mother? She would be concerned. She would advise him to consult with a teacher. William was aware that this would not be beneficial. The institution would not penalize one of its most prominent athletes for an issue that was impossible to verify. William responded to the situation in the same manner as he had in the past. He disregarded it. At the very least, that was the intention. Until a single moment occurred that altered everything. It was Friday, and it was lunchtime. William had just sat down with his tray, occupied with his own thoughts, when a shadow descended over his table. Ryan. His typical entourage, Zach and Brandon, stood behind him. Ryan beamed while speaking loudly enough for the tables in the vicinity to hear. He inquired, "Mercer, I've been curious, why do you not speak up more? What, your tongue was stolen by a cat?" William did not respond. He savored his meal, chewing it leisurely. That response was inadequate. Ryan removed the apple from William's platter and hurled it across the cafeteria. It struck the ground with a faint thud in the vicinity of the beverage station. A few students' heads turned in anticipation of the next events. William meticulously placed his utensil on the table. For the first time in the course of the week, he deliberately gazed at Ryan. Ryan's greatest error occurred when he mistook William's silence for dread and smiled. He exerted considerable force on William's shoulder. He shouted, "Mercer, act now," in a voice that was audible to all. William inhaled deeply, his muscles already coiled. He was in control. Additionally, this time, he refrained from withdrawing. Even the lunch staff behind the counter paused, observing from a distance, as the cafeteria froze. Conversations were cut short, and the sound of plastic trays scraping against tables ceased. Ryan Callowell had just shoved William Mercer in front of everyone. Finally, all eyes were on him to determine his next move. William remained seated for a brief period, his mind already engaged in calculations. The words of his father reverberated in his mind, "You do not engage in combat out of anger. Control is your weapon of choice." His movements were precise and effortless, akin to a man stretching before an exercise. He stood up slowly, pushing his chair back. There was no rush or panic. Ryan's grin broadened as he gazed at his friends. "Oh, we have a tough guy," he said. "You're going to swing, Mercer? Are you going to act like a thug now?" William's expression remained unchanged. He simply inclined his head slightly, scrutinizing Ryan as if he were an equation that did not quite add up. Ryan recognized that something was amiss at that instant. William did not exhibit any signs of anxiety, apprehension, or even squinting. Ryan's grin faltered slightly, as if a deep, primal instinct was intervening to warn him that he may have made an error, causing a slight shift in his weight and a small hesitation. However, it was already too late. Ryan again shoved William as he reached out. William progressed rapidly this time. Before Ryan's hands could completely extend, William's left hand shot up, gripping Ryan's wrist in a single smooth motion. His right hand followed suit, moving with lightning speed and precision, and clamping onto Ryan's elbow. Then, without exerting any effort, William made a minor pivot, exploiting Ryan's own momentum to his advantage. Ryan's feet lifted off the ground, and his back struck the cafeteria floor before he could comprehend the situation. The room was filled with a sudden, aghast silence. Ryan's body was sprawled on the tile as he gasped, sincerely shocked. He struggled to sit up, his eyes wide and bewildered. William did not even glance at his companions as they advanced, rather, he sank to the ground next to Ryan, his voice trembling. "Equal. Please refrain from ever touching me again." There were no threats or insults, only a statement. This is precisely what exacerbated the situation. Ryan was not only defeated, he was also terminated. William stood up, brushed his hands as if he had just moved a chair rather than a person, and took up his tray. He did not even glance back as he walked away. Students gazed at Ryan, William, and one another in the cafeteria, which was still completely silent. Then, a solitary voice whispered, "Holy sh," from a distance into the background. Immediately, the floodgates were opened. Whispers evolved into murmurs, which in turn evolved into enthusiastic discussions. Someone had captured the entire event on their phone, and another individual was already messaging about it. Ryan remained seated on the floor, his mandible clenched and his hands curled into tight, white-knuckled fists. He was aware. Everyone at Redmond High would be discussing the events that transpired by the time the final bell tolled. However, this was not the conclusion. By the time the final bell tolled, the narrative had already circulated throughout Redmond High School like a wildfire. Ryan Callow had been dropped off in the cafeteria by William Mercer. Not with a strike, not with a wild brawl, but with a single, clean, and effortless movement. This is precisely why it was so difficult to disregard. If William had engaged in a physical altercation, the outcome would have been vastly different. It would have been merely another school brawl. The details would be distorted by rumors, and the children would choose sides. Eventually, the issue would dissipate. However, what about this? This was a distinct experience. William had presented Ryan as a defenseless and vulnerable individual. In an environment such as Redmond High, this was not overlooked. William ignored the stares as he exited the school building. Some children observed him as if it were their first time encountering him, while others murmured when his back was turned. A few appeared visibly anxious. Ryan was not waiting outside, that would have been too evident. However, William was not a fool. He was aware of the mechanics of this. Men such as Ryan did not tolerate embarrassment casually. They did not simply rise, dust themselves off, and continue their lives. They anticipated and schemed. They ensured that their retribution was worthwhile. William had previously observed it. He was aware that this was not the end. He barely made it through dinner at home before his mother noticed. She had a way of looking at him that was characterized by a subtle tilt of her head, as if she were scanning his face for hidden details. "Is everything proceeding smoothly at school?" she inquired, laying down her fork. His father, who was seated across from him, also appeared to gaze upward. William sighed. "Yes. A typical day." His mother declined to acquire it, while his father continued to consume it. That was the distinction between them. His mother posed inquiries, while his father awaited responses. William's phone rang later that evening. A text message from an unknown number. Unknown, you believe you are resilient? You were fortunate today. Unknown, exercise caution. William fixed his gaze on the screen. After exhaling, he secured his phone and placed it facing down on his desk. This was neither surprising nor unanticipated. However, he was now faced with a decision. Would he allow this to pass? Would he pretend that it never occurred? Or would he ensure that Ryan and all others comprehended his true identity? As a result of the subsequent events, it was imminent. William was aware of the change in the atmosphere before he even entered the building on Monday morning. The silent conversations that ceased as he passed. The sideways glances. It was the sole confirmation he required. The narrative had gained official momentum. As he approached his locker, 2 freshmen had already evaded him. A junior whom he was unfamiliar with extended an affirmative gesture. Then, there were those who unexpectedly expressed a desire to be his friend. "Mercer, I'm here. You truly embarrassed Calloway. I heard you barely even touched him. He just dropped like a sack of bricks, bro. You are unable to communicate, and you have hands like that? Dude, that is quite chilly." William neglected the majority of it, offering only a fleeting glimpse or a brief nod, as this was not a display of respect, but rather an act of entertainment. They were not viewing him as a person, but as a spectacle, a live manifestation of a rumor. Ryan was visible to him at that moment. He was positioned in his customary location near the main entrance. A change had occurred, however. The customary arrogant grin was absent, as was the effortless assurance. Instead, Ryan stood rigidly, his fists clenched at his sides. He was not alone. Zach and Brandon, as they had always done, flanked him, but not with laughter. William's gaze was briefly met by Ryan, who then averted his focus. William nearly chuckled, but he was aware that Ryan had not conceded. Individuals such as himself did not simply accept defeat, rather, they anticipated a rematch. Lunch was considerably less satisfactory. The air was thick with expectation, and William could sense it before he even sat down. People watched him, as if they were anticipating something, as if they thought Ryan might storm across the cafeteria for a round 2. However, Ryan was not present in the room. His customary table was vacant. William had only begun to consume his meal when an individual occupied the adjacent seat. Not a member of Ryan's personal crew. She is a female. Ava Sinclair. He had never conversed with her before, but he was aware of her. She was intelligent, self-assured, and never inclined to conform to the norm. She placed her beverage on the table and observed him for a brief period. Subsequently, she stated, "You did not simply defeat Ryan. You subjected him to humiliation." William bit into his meal, chewed it, and swallowed it. He stated, "Subsequently, he selected the fight." Ava sneered. "Yes, but you terminated it. That is detrimental to him." William did not respond. She leaned slightly forward. "Look, please be cautious. Ryan's father serves on the education board. Do you believe that he will let this slide?" William met her gaze with a steady, unwavering demeanor. "Does it appear that I am concerned?" Ava exhaled and shook her head. "You should." She rose from her seat and retrieved her tray. "Please be cautious." She exited the premises. William experienced an emotion that he had not experienced since Friday. Not annoyance. Not wrath. Inquiry. Because whatever was forthcoming, It would not be another cafeteria fistfight. The energy at Redmond High had once again changed by Wednesday. Ryan Callowell was not merely evading William, he was actively eradicating him. No more comments, no more arrogant glances, and no more games. Nothing. For certain men, that would have sufficed. William had emerged victorious, was that not the objective? However, there was still an unsettling sensation. And that sentiment was further intensified when Ava encountered him subsequent to her most recent menstrual cycle. She did not squander any time. "Ryan's father is attempting to have you expelled." William's response was minimal. "For what purpose?" Ava scoffed, stating, "They require no justification. He is asserting that you assaulted Ryan without provocation. In an effort to solidify the matter, he is manipulating threads." William was not startled. He had previously observed this scenario unfold. A different location. The same script. The rules are suddenly not applied in the same manner when a white child initiates an activity and a black child concludes it. He slowly inhaled while running his hand over his face. "So what should I do?" Ava hesitated before responding, "Retaliate. Not with weapons. With evidence." William resumed his duties that evening. By morning, he had acquired all the necessary items. Footage of the cafeteria fight, the complete footage, not just the takedown, screenshots of texts, and witnesses who were willing to offer their support. He was not alone when he entered the school. He was accompanied by Ava and 2 other students, whom he had only recently encountered. However, they were aware of the truth. Additionally, this sufficed. They proceeded directly to the principal's office. And by the conclusion of the meeting, Ryan's father did not obtain his desired outcome. William was not suspended or expelled. However, nothing became attached. Because the truth was not only on his side, it was indisputable. Ryan did not return to school for the remainder of the week. Upon his eventual return, he was markedly different. Less assertive. Quieter. He maintained a modest profile and maintained a low voice. He harbored no apprehension towards William. However, he comprehended. William had not merely defeated him in a physical altercation. He had prevailed over him in the most critical aspect. And that is what individuals recall. William never requested reverence. He never solicited attention. He merely desired to exist. Without being subjected to testing, challenge, or the necessity of repeatedly demonstrating his abilities. However, what is the truth? Certain individuals acquire knowledge exclusively through the application of consequences. And when you eventually demonstrate your capabilities, they are incapable of forgetting. Occasionally, the act of standing one's ground does not involve delivering a strike. The goal is to ensure that the truth is more pronounced than the falsehoods. If this narrative resonated with you, please subscribe and inform us in the comments section. Have you ever been compelled to prove yourself when you should not have?